Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're stepping back in time to explore the surprisingly influential world of interior design.
Ooh, interior design.
Specifically,
Okay.
we're going to be looking at Marie Antoinette's bedroom at Versailles.
Wow.
You provided this article from cardinalmemorials.com, and it's packed with fascinating details about how this one room played a role in sparking the French Revolution.
I mean, talk about a bedroom having an impact.
I know, right? Like, get ready for secret passages and hidden doors behind the bed, and even like a mini summer apartment.
What?
Yeah, all right there in Versailles.
In the palace.
Yeah. We'll uncover how seemingly personal design choices actually reflected broader societal issues and became powerful symbols during a time of massive upheaval.
It's incredible how a bedroom can be so much more than just a place to sleep, right?
Yeah.
In Marie Antoinette's case, it became a stage where every detail, from the lilac silk drapes to the intricate golden designs, reflected a world of opulence and royal power. And, unfortunately, a stark contrast to the struggles of everyday French citizens.
It really is like stepping into a time capsule, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine furniture crafted by the legendary Jean-Henri Riesner, secret passages, hidden doors.
Wow.
It sounds like something straight out of a movie or something.
It does.
But this lavish lifestyle wasn't just a matter of personal taste. It played a huge role in widening the gap between the monarchy and the people.
Right.
The article mentions how Marie Antoinette kept expanding her living space,
Oh, really?
adding rooms like a billiard room
Wow.
and even a miniature summer apartment all right there.
Oh my gosh.
Just adding on.
And that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
While Marie Antoinette was creating her own little world of luxury, the common people of France were struggling with poverty and food shortages.
Right.
So you can imagine how this visual representation of wealth, especially during a time of widespread hardship, fueled resentment towards the monarch.
Yeah, so let's talk about privacy for a second. The article highlights how Marie Antoinette really tried to create her own private sanctuary within Versailles. She had concealed entrances, secret passages, almost like she was trying to escape the constant pressure of court life.
I mean, living in a palace where every move is scrutinized must have been incredibly stifling.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about it. Even something as simple as stepping out of your bedroom was like a public affair.
Right.
So it's no wonder she craved a sense of control over her personal space. I mean, these hidden doors and these passages, particularly the one behind her bed, leading to both the king's chambers and a corridor to the nursery, gave her a degree of freedom and autonomy that was really rare for someone in her position.
But here's the irony.
Okay.
Those very features that were designed to give her privacy ended up fueling even more public fascination and envy.
Right.
It's like the secrecy itself became a symbol of the monarchy's detachment from the people.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like the more she tried to create her own world, the more the public perceived her as out of touch with their reality.
Exactly. And this disconnect was only amplified by her fashion choices, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of fashion, can you believe she ordered up to 300 gowns a year?
What?
I mean, talk about a wardrobe.
What?
Most of us can only dream of 300 gowns a year.
Remember, at that time, fashion wasn't just about personal style.
Right.
It was a powerful display of wealth and status in a country that was teetering on the brink of economic collapse.
Yeah.
Her extravagant gowns and her lavish spending on accessories just became a lightning rod for criticism.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's that whole incident with the muslin chemise gowns.
Yes, the muslin chemise gowns.
It seems like a classic case of good intentions backfiring.
It does,
Yeah.
totally.
So,
She was trying to adopt a simpler style inspired by the philosopher Rousseau's ideas of natural living.
oh, okay.
And she may have thought it would make her more relatable, but instead it really devastated the French silk industry, which was already struggling.
Yeah, so instead of coming across as down to earth, she inadvertently caused further economic hardship for the very people she was trying to connect with.
Wow.
Talk about a fashion faux pas with far-reaching consequences.
Yeah, it seems like every attempt to exert control or express herself just ended up pushing her further away from the people.
I know, it's so interesting.
Yeah, that's a really insightful observation.
Thanks.
It really speaks to the complexities of power perception and the challenges of bridging the gap between different social classes.
So we've talked about the opulence of her bedroom and her extravagant fashion choices.
Right.
But the article also mentions her yearning for a simpler life, which led her to create the Petit Trianon and the Queen's Hamlet.
Oh.
Can you give us a little background on those places?
Of course. So the Petit Trianon was a smaller palace on the grounds of Versailles.
Okay.
Think of it as a private retreat where Marie Antoinette could escape the strict rules and expectations of court life.
And the Queen's Hamlet was even more interesting, wasn't it?
It was almost like stepping into a fairy tale. So the Queen's Hamlet was a sort of idealized village built within the gardens of the Petit Trianon.
Wow.
Imagine charming cottages, a working mill, a dairy farm.
Really?
It was designed to evoke this romanticized vision of simple country life.
It does sound idyllic.
It does.
But I can also see how it would be perceived as completely out of touch.
Right.
Especially during a time of widespread hunger and poverty.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
While Marie Antoinette may have seen it as a personal sanctuary, a way to reconnect with nature and a simpler way of life, the public really saw it as just another example of the monarchy's extravagance and indifference to their struggles.
It's fascinating how even her attempts to create a more down-to-earth experience backfired.
It is.
It's like every design choice, every element of her private life just became fuel for the fire of public discontent.
You're absolutely right. And this brings us to the power of symbolism, when you say.
Okay.
Every detail of Marie Antoinette's bedroom and her surrounding spaces was loaded with meaning, whether she intended it or not.
Okay, walk me through this. What kind of symbols are we talking about? And how did they contribute to the growing unrest?
Okay, well, let's take the gold room, for example.
Okay.
The article mentions how it was decorated with ancient Roman and Egyptian-inspired decor. Now, this wasn't just about aesthetics.
Okay.
It was about connecting the monarchy with a lineage of power and grandeur.
So it was a way of visually reinforcing her authority and legitimacy as a ruler.
Exactly. And even seemingly mundane features like the tables that could be raised and lowered to avoid servant intrusion played a role in this message of hierarchy and separation.
It's like those tables were like a constant reminder of the vast social divide between the monarchy and the common people.
Precisely.
Yeah.
These design choices, even those intended for comfort or convenience, ultimately played into this narrative of privilege and isolation.
And of course, we can't forget about the infamous "let them eat cake" quote, which, even if she never actually said it, has become permanently attached to her legacy.
Right. That quote, whether true or not, perfectly encapsulates the public perception of her as completely detached from the realities of everyday life.
Right.
It's a powerful example of how propaganda and public perception can shape history, often overshadowing reality. The article mentions that she was involved in charitable work.
Right.
But those efforts were overshadowed by this image of extravagance.
It's a sobering reminder of how our actions, even those with good intentions, can be interpreted in ways that we never intended, especially when we're in positions of power.
Absolutely.
So we've explored the historical context and the symbolic significance of Marie Antoinette's bedroom.
Right.
Now, I'm curious to dive into the article section on incorporating elements of her style into a contemporary home.
Okay.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it?
It is.
We've been discussing how her lavish lifestyle contributed to a revolution.
Right.
And now we're talking about how to translate that style into our own modern spaces.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're trying to capture the beauty and elegance without the historical baggage. So what are some key takeaways for those of us wanting to add a touch of royal flair to our decor?
Well, the article highlights several elements that were central to Marie Antoinette's aesthetic.
Okay.
First, think about pastel palettes, soft pinks, lavenders, light greens.
So we're going for a delicate and airy feel.
Yes.
Instead of bold primary colors.
Exactly. Then we can't forget about ornate furniture pieces with intricate carvings, tufted upholstery, that overall sense of grandeur.
That sounds a little intimidating.
It can be.
Can we give those classic elements a modern twist?
Absolutely. You can find vintage-inspired pieces that are updated with modern materials and lines.
No.
It's about creating a balance between classic elegance and contemporary functionality.
I love that idea. And speaking of elegance, what kind of textiles should we be thinking about?
Think rich velvets, luxurious silks, beautiful damasks.
Those all sound a bit pricey, though.
They can be.
Are there any budget-friendly ways to achieve that luxurious look?
Of course. You can find beautiful Dupioni silks, velvets, and even faux furs that evoke the same luxurious feel without breaking the bank.
That's great to hear. And let's not forget about the mirrors.
The mirrors!
The article emphasizes how Marie Antoinette used them to enhance the light and create a sense of spaciousness.
Right. Mirrors were a key element in her design scheme.
Yeah.
They added a touch of glamour and helped reflect light throughout the room, making spaces feel larger and more impressive.
So we're talking large, ornate mirrors strategically placed to maximize their impact.
Exactly. You could even consider creating a mirrored wall for a truly dramatic effect.
Wow.
And don't forget about gold accents.
Hmm.
Marie Antoinette loved to incorporate gold into her decor, whether it was through hardware picture frames or decorative objects.
Gold definitely adds that touch of regal elegance, but we have to use it carefully, right?
We do.
We don't want to end up with a gaudy mess.
You're absolutely right. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Small touches of gold strategically placed can really elevate the overall look without being overwhelming.
Okay, I'm loving these tips. What about lighting? Any advice on creating that warm and inviting glow we often associate with her style?
Well, chandeliers are definitely a must-have.
Okay.
They add instant drama and sophistication.
Chandeliers. I love the idea,
Huh?
but I'm picturing myself on a ladder trying to dust all those crystals.
I hear you.
No.
So don't worry, you don't have to go full-on Versailles.
Okay.
You can find smaller, more manageable chandeliers or even opt for pendant lights with a similar elegant feel.
Mm-hmm.
But don't just stop there. Layer in other types of lighting like sconces, table lamps, and even candles to create a more nuanced and atmospheric effect.
I'm getting all sorts of ideas. This is so much fun. And of course, we can't forget about those beautiful floral patterns and natural elements.
Yeah.
The article mentions how Marie Antoinette loved to incorporate these into her decor.
Absolutely. Floral patterns can add a touch of romance and femininity to any space. You can incorporate them through wallpaper fabrics or even fresh flowers. And adding natural elements like plants and greenery brings a sense of life and vibrancy to the room.
So we're essentially trying to create a space that feels both luxurious and inviting. It's like having a little bit of Versailles in your own home, but in a way that feels modern and livable.
That's a great way to put it.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
It has.
It's incredible how one room, Marie Antoinette's bedroom, can hold so much history, symbolism, and even design inspiration.
It really shows how personal spaces can reflect broader societal issues and how design choices can become powerful symbols.
And it's fascinating to see how we can draw inspiration from such a complex and controversial figure like Marie Antoinette.
It is. It encourages us to think critically about the choices we make in our own homes and how those choices might reflect our values and aspirations.
Now, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I want to take a moment to talk about privacy, something that clearly mattered a great deal to Marie Antoinette.
Yeah.
We've discussed her secret passages and hidden doors, and while we might not be able to build those into our modern homes,
Right.
there are still ways to create a sense of privacy and sanctuary in our own spaces.
That's a great point. Privacy is something we all crave, even if our lives aren't as public as hers was.
Right.
We need spaces where we can unwind, recharge, and just be ourselves without the pressures of the outside world.
Exactly. So what are some practical ways we can enhance privacy in our homes, even without resorting to secret passages?
There are lots of clever design strategies we can use.
Okay.
Think about things like strategic furniture placement room dividers, and even the use of textiles.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Of course. Let's say you have an open plan living area.
Right.
You could use a bookshelf or a tall plant to create a visual separation between the living and dining spaces.
Okay.
Or you could use curtains or screens to create a sense of enclosure around a reading nook or a home office.
Those are great ideas. And what about textiles? How can we use those to enhance privacy?
Think about layering curtains or drapes. You could have a sheer layer that lets in natural light during the day, and then a heavier, more opaque layer that you can draw closed for privacy at night. Or you could use a canopy or a draped fabric over a bed to create a cozy and intimate feeling.
I love those ideas. It's all about creating layers and using textiles to define spaces within a room.
Exactly. And don't forget about the power of sound.
Oh, right.
You can use things like rugs, carpets, and even tapestries to absorb sound and create a more peaceful and private atmosphere.
So it's about thinking holistically about all the senses when we're designing our spaces.
Absolutely. And remember, creating privacy isn't just about physical barriers. It's also about creating a sense of psychological comfort and security.
So we're talking about creating spaces that feel safe, welcoming, and truly personal.
Exactly. Spaces where we can relax, recharge, and be ourselves without feeling like we're on display.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll delve deeper into Marie Antoinette's fashion choices, her yearning for a simpler life, and how those desires played out in her design choices. We'll be right back after a quick break to discuss the complexities of her story and how we can draw inspiration from her triumphs and her missteps. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Before we dig into Marie Antoinette's fashion choices and her desire for a simpler life, let's dive back into the symbolism of her bedroom.
Okay.
We were talking about those tables that could be raised and lowered to avoid servants. You know, on the surface, it's a clever way to control your space and your interactions.
Yeah, But it's also a very visual reminder of the power dynamics at play.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a silent statement about who's serving whom.
Exactly.
And I can't imagine that went unnoticed by the people of France at that time.
Definitely not. It subtly reinforces that hierarchy, especially during a time when people were questioning the very structure of society.
Right.
But there are other symbols in her decor, too. For example, the article mentions how pineapples were used throughout the room.
Pineapples.
Yes.
Okay.
Today, we might just think of them as a tasty fruit.
Right.
But back then, they were incredibly rare and expensive.
So having pineapples on display was like saying, look what I can afford, even though most people can only dream of it.
Right.
It almost seems tone deaf, given the economic struggles going on outside the palace walls.
You're exactly right. They became a symbol of extravagant wealth, further highlighting the disconnect between the monarchy and the common people.
Okay.
And then there's the choice of materials and fabrics.
Uh-huh.
Think about all that silk velvet and those luxurious textiles.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't just expensive, they were impractical for everyday life.
It's true. Those fabrics practically scream luxury and leisure, a far cry from the practicality that most people needed in their daily lives.
Right.
It really does visually represent that gap between Marie Antoinette's world and the struggles happening outside Versailles.
It does. And this focus on luxury extended to everything. The furniture, the artwork, every little detail.
Yeah.
The bedroom wasn't just a room, it was a carefully crafted statement.
Right.
And unfortunately, that statement wasn't resonating well with the people of France.
Speaking of statements, we can't forget about how Marie Antoinette was portrayed in the media and propaganda.
The media.
That infamous "let them eat cake" quote,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's probably not true,
Yeah.
is such a powerful example of how a simple phrase, accurate or not,
Right.
can shape an entire legacy.
You're right. It's incredibly powerful. And
Yeah.
whether or not she actually uttered those words, the quote reflects how she was perceived,
Mm-hmm.
out of touch and indifferent to the suffering of the people.
Right.
Think about it. The article mentions her charitable work,
Yeah.
but that was all overshadowed by the narrative of excess and indifference.
It's a reminder that even when you're trying to do good, public perception can be a powerful force.
Absolutely.
It also makes you wonder if perhaps even with different design choices, the forces of public opinion might have already turned against her.
It's certainly possible. The French Revolution had deep roots, and a single bedroom, however opulent, couldn't have caused it single-handedly.
Right.
But we can't deny that her lifestyle, visually represented by her lavish spaces,
Yeah.
played a role in shaping how the public viewed her.
Mm-hmm.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of personal choices, public image, and those broader historical forces.
It's a reminder that our choices, especially when we're in positions of influence,
Right.
can have ripple effects we might not anticipate.
Yeah.
It's something to consider in our own lives, even if our decisions aren't shaping the course of history.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit. You mentioned Marie Antoinette's yearning for a simpler life.
Yeah.
This is where the Petit Trianon and the Queen's Hamlet come in.
Right. Exactly. She was this powerful queen living in unimaginable opulence.
Right.
Still, she yearned for something different.
Yeah.
The Petit Trianon was her escape from the rigid formality of court life. And the Queen's Hamlet, even more so, represented this romanticized vision of rural life.
It's like she was trying to create her own little utopia, a world where she could be closer to nature and enjoy a simpler existence. It sounds like she was looking for the same kind of peace and tranquility that many of us crave today.
And in a way, it's relatable, isn't it?
Yeah.
That desire for escape, for a connection to something more authentic and grounding, is a sentiment that resonates across time. But of course, the irony is that at the time, it was seen as another example of her detachment from reality.
I can see how that would happen.
Yeah.
Here she was playing at being a shepherdess while the country was in turmoil.
Right.
It's like the more she tried to simplify her life, the more it seemed to highlight the vast chasm between her experiences and the struggles of the common people.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a reminder that context is everything.
Yeah.
What might seem like a harmless personal preference in one setting
Right.
can be perceived very differently in another.
Yeah.
And speaking of perception,
Okay.
we've been talking a lot about the negative aspects of Marie Antoinette's image, but there's also this fascinating element of enduring style and elegance
Right.
that continues to inspire people today.
That's what's so interesting about this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just about condemning a historical figure. It's about understanding the complexities of her life,
Right.
the good and the bad,
Right.
and finding those threads of inspiration that still resonate today.
I couldn't agree more. And that brings us back to the article's suggestions for incorporating some of Marie Antoinette's style into modern homes.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me that we can find inspiration in the very things that contributed to her downfall.
That's the beauty of design, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving, reinterpreting the past, and finding new ways to express our values and aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's like taking a historical element and giving it a fresh, modern twist.
Exactly.
So where do we start? What are some key elements that we can borrow from Marie Antoinette's aesthetic?
Well, her love of pastel colors is a great place to start.
Okay.
Think soft pinks, calming lavenders, delicate greens.
I love those colors. They evoke such a sense of serenity and elegance. They do. But I'm a little worried about my home looking too well pastel.
Okay.
How can we incorporate those hues without going overboard?
Balance is key. You can use pastels as your dominant color scheme and then ground them with some neutral accents like white, gray, or beige.
Okay.
Or you can use them as pops of color against a more neutral backdrop.
So maybe a pale pink accent wall with white bedding and some gray furniture. Or maybe a beautiful lavender throw pillow on a charcoal-colored sofa.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right balance for your space and your personal taste.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to mix and match different pastel shades to create a more dynamic and visually interesting look.
I love that. Now, what about the furniture? What kind of pieces would Marie Antoinette approve of?
She was all about ornate furniture with intricate carvings, beautiful tufted upholstery, and a real sense of grandeur.
Yeah.
Imagine elegant chairs, chaise lounges, beautiful dressing tables.
But those kinds of pieces can be so expensive and hard to find. Are there more budget-friendly options for those of us who aren't living in a palace?
Absolutely. Look for vintage-inspired pieces that have those classic design elements but are made with more affordable materials.
Okay.
Or get creative and upcycle existing furniture by adding some decorative details like new hardware, a fresh coat of paint, or even some new fabric.
I love the upcycling idea.
Mm.
It's a great way to add a personal touch and be kind to your budget.
Exactly. And speaking of personal touches, remember to incorporate pieces that reflect your individual style. Marie Antoinette may have been a trendsetter, but she also had her unique taste.
Right.
Don't be afraid to blend those historical inspirations with pieces that speak to you.
It's all about finding that balance between the old and the new, the historical and the personal.
Exactly.
So we've got our colors and furniture sorted. Now let's talk fabrics. What kind of textures and materials should we be looking for?
Think about the luxurious textiles that filled Marie Antoinette's bedroom. Rich velvets, shimmering silks, elegant damask.
Again, those sound lovely, but they can be quite pricey. Any suggestions for achieving that luxurious feel without breaking the bank?
Definitely. You can find beautiful Dupioni silk velvet and even some faux fur options that create that same luxurious feel without the hefty price tag.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to mix and match.
Layering those different fabrics must be key to creating that truly opulent look.
You're right. It's all about using a mix of textures and patterns to add visual interest and depth. Try draping a luxurious velvet throw over a silk-upholstered chair, or maybe add a faux fur rug underneath a beautiful damask-covered ottoman.
Oh, wow.
It's about creating a sense of abundance and richness.
Okay, so we've got our colors, furniture, and fabrics. Now, what about those final touches that really make a space feel complete?
Well, we can't forget about Marie Antoinette's love of mirrors.
The mirrors.
They're a fantastic way to add light, make a space feel larger, and give it that extra touch of glamour.
Right.
Imagine a large ornate mirror over a fireplace or a dresser. You could even create a mirrored wall for a truly dramatic and unforgettable effect.
A mirrored wall. I love it. Mirrors are such a simple way to elevate a space.
Yeah.
Now, what about lighting? What are your tips for creating that warm and inviting glow?
Chandeliers.
Okay.
They're a must-have for any Marie Antoinette-inspired space.
Yeah.
They bring instant drama and elegance.
I'm all about the drama and elegance, but I also worry about the practicality of keeping them clean.
Oh, yeah.
All those crystals.
You bring up a good point. But remember, you don't have to go full-on Versailles.
Okay.
You can find smaller, more manageable chandeliers, or even opt for beautiful pendant lights that have a similar elegant feel.
Right.
But don't stop there. Layering in different types of lighting like sconces, table lamps, and even some strategically placed candles can create a more nuanced and romantic atmosphere.
I love that layered approach to lighting. Now, speaking of romance, we can't forget about the flowers. Marie Antoinette was famous for her love of fresh blooms.
Absolutely. Fresh flowers, whether real or faux, are essential for capturing that romantic feminine energy. And don't forget about other natural elements like plants and greenery
Right.
to bring in a sense of life and vitality.
So essentially, we're trying to create a space that feels luxurious and inviting,
Yeah,
like our own personal retreat within our homes.
exactly. It's about bringing in those elements of Marie Antoinette's style and adapting them to our modern sensibilities.
Yeah,
And of course, don't forget about those clever storage solutions that were so important to her.
right.
We might not be able to build secret passages,
Right.
but we can still find creative ways to maximize space and create a sense of privacy.
That's right. Even if we can't have hidden doors, we could still incorporate built-in shelves, cleverly designed furniture with hidden compartments and ottomans with storage space to keep our belongings organized and tucked away.
Yes.
It's all about maximizing both style and functionality.
Right.
And ultimately, it's about more than just recreating a specific historical look, isn't it?
It is. It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind those design choices.
Yeah.
The desire for beauty, the longing for privacy, the need for control, and finding ways to express those desires in a way that reflects our own individual needs and aspirations.
This has been such a fun and fascinating exploration of Marie Antoinette's bedroom, and I love how you've tied together history, design, and personal reflection.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun with it.
Yes.
Take inspiration from history, add your personal touch, and create a space that truly feels like your own.
Love that.
We'll be back after a quick break to wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts and reflections. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We've covered so much in our deep dive into Marie Antoinette's bedroom, the historical context, the symbolism, the design elements, and even her yearning for a simpler life.
I know, right?
It's amazing how one room can reveal so much about a person and a period in history.
It really is. And now as we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on what we can learn from Marie Antoinette's story, especially when it comes to our own homes and design choices.
I think one of the most important takeaways is that our homes are more than just places to live. They're expressions of who we are, what we value, and how we see ourselves in the world. Just like Marie Antoinette's bedroom became a symbol of her world. Yeah,
Our homes tell a story about us.
that's such a great point. It makes you really think about the choices we make, from the colors we paint our walls to the furniture we choose, even the smallest decorative accents.
Yes.
They all contribute to the story our homes tell.
And it's not just about aesthetics, it's about functionality, comfort, and creating a space that truly supports our well-being. Marie Antoinette, despite her opulence, was clearly seeking a sense of peace and privacy in her personal spaces, something that resonates with many of us today.
Absolutely. I think we all crave that sense of sanctuary in our homes.
Right.
A place where we can escape the pressures of the outside world and just be ourselves.
Exactly. And while we might not be able to build secret passages or create miniature villages in our backyards, we can still find ways to incorporate elements of Marie Antoinette's style and sensibility into our modern lives.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are some final pieces of advice you'd give our listener who might be feeling inspired to bring a touch of Marie Antoinette's elegance into their own home? I'd say embrace those pastel palettes, those soft romantic hues that create a sense of calm and tranquility. Don't be afraid to incorporate a little bit of opulence, whether it's through luxurious fabrics, ornate furniture pieces, or even just a touch of gold accent.
And don't forget about the importance of lighting.
Yes, the lighting.
Whether it's a statement chandelier or a collection of candles creating a warm and inviting glow can instantly transform a space.
Absolutely. And remember, it's all about finding that balance between historical inspiration and personal expression. Take those elements that resonate with you and adapt them to your own style and needs. Create a space that feels both beautiful and authentically yours.
This has been such a fascinating journey through history, design, and personal reflection. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about Marie Antoinette and her iconic bedroom, but about the power of design to shape our lives and reflect who we are.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed it and found it inspiring.
Until next time, happy decorating.